Hello there, great or struggling bowlers out there everywhere. Should we wipe our bowling ball after each shot? Does the oil from each shot change the surface of the ball for the next shot or not? Well, I did some more tests and more results are in. Check it out. After a small debate I had with another YouTuber, J.R. Raymond, and you can check that in the videos in the description. Some of the things he said sounded kind of weird to me, plus in the comments section no one seemed to be sure, so all that made me want to rethink and recheck my understanding and my perceptions of how oil interacts with surface changes. We should always keep an open mind and be ready to be corrected if we're wrong, because it's science. We have to gather data, and whatever the data says, that's the fact. The rest is opinion. I already did the two tests on two different bowling balls in my previous video. One was an old Pearl ball where I left the oil to dry, and one was a modern strong cover stock ball which I wiped the oil. You can check the results from those two tests on the link over here. I'll wait. Did you click it? But today we're going to do a different test, and we're going to do it on a modern, solid, strong cover stock bowling ball. It is one of the most early hooking cover stocks of the brand, and the ball has 9 games on it. It's very new condition, and the ball also has probably a very tiny amount of oil inside, because I always wipe it when it comes back. I don't let the oil sit on the ball to get absorbed. So the ability to absorb oil of this ball is still quite high. And just to be on the safe side, I decided to prepare a very low grit cover stock. So it's very aggressive, it's large pores, big teeth, so that any results that we see, any differences that we see, is probably going to be the maximum that we will ever see on the lanes. And I say this because obviously as the ball gets shinier, so the higher the grit, the effects of friction and oil start to matter less and less. So for example, if you have a ball that is 4500 grit, it will vary less and the variance is not going to be noticeable. It is very probable that 99% of bowlers will not be able to perceive the difference in ball reaction between a ball that is 4000 and 5000. It might go a little bit further down the lane, but the overall shape is going to be very similar. In tests that have been done with the robot by Brunswick, I think, many years ago, where they shot everything, they kept everything the same, and they changed only the grit of the ball, the surface grit of the ball. You pretty much started to see a big difference from 3000 and below. From 3000 and above, the difference was very small. The ball was set up to strike and it struck. So keep that in mind. And what affects bowling ball surface when we throw it? Well, from what we know, one major factor is the machines and the belts and the pulleys that bring the ball back to us. Others think that the lane surface itself also affects the surface of the ball. J.R. Raymond, for example, thinks that the lane also affects the surface of the ball. On the other hand, Ronald Hickland from CDD has said that the lane doesn't affect the surface of the bowling ball much, And I tend to agree with that, even though I don't have any proof. But there are some indications. One is that the lane surface is much shinier than a bowling ball. As he recently showed, the lane surface can be like 6500. And another thing to consider is that actually the ball on the lane is like 3/4 on oil, so it doesn't actually have any significant friction with the lane. So to eliminate all these factors that can affect the surface of the bowling ball and focus just on the oil, I got me some lane oil. This is Kegel Prodigy lane oil, which is a very common lane oil. So this is what we're going to use. How are we going to do this test? Because we are mainly interested about the part of the ball that is in contact with the lane, I will focus on the track area where the oil rings appear. I will scan the ball twice, one near the finger holes and one a bit further away. So that way we have two equators here that will gather information about what is going on with this part of the bowling ball. Because as you know, this part of the bowling ball never touches the lane actually. Then I will put some oil, lane oil, over the track here, trying to simulate the oil rings as best as I can, because that's not easy, because as the ball is rolling, it's a very thin layer that creates these lines. It might seem a lot of oil, but it's actually a very tiny amount. And immediately I'm going to scan the ball again. Why, you might ask? Well, that is going to simulate what is going on with the ball when you're practicing alone and you're throwing shot after shot without waiting, so all the oil is on the ball. And it's going to simulate what happens in the 10th frame, where you have to throw 1, 2 or 3 shots and you don't wipe your bowling ball. Then I'm going to wait 5 to 7 minutes to simulate what happens in a league, where you have to wait that amount of time before you play again and you don't wipe your bowling ball. So this scan is going to show us how different the ball is in the track area from shot to shot in a league where you don't wipe it. Wait, there's more. Then I'm going to wipe the ball after the 5 to 7 minutes have passed, and that's going to simulate what happens if you play in a league of 4 or 5 team members and you do wipe your bowling ball after waiting that amount of time. One difficulty of this test is exactly how much oil should I apply on the track area. In most situations, we can safely say that the average lane oil is between 20 and 25 milliliters. So to be safe, I'm going to go with 25. It's complicated to calculate oil depletion, but fortunately Kegel has done some tests and can offer us some numbers. They found that after 9 to 15 games, approximately 60% of the oil was removed from the lane. So if we have an average of 25 milliliters, 60% of that is 15 milliliters. Now, perhaps some of this oil is smeared in the pulleys and the machines, and it's not all of it on the ball when it comes back. But just to be on the safe side, we're going to assume that all of it is on the ball. Okay, in a 5-player league, we have 150 shots for the 3 games that remove 15 milliliters of oil. So 15 divided by 150 gives us a 0.1 milliliter oil that is removed with each shot. Again, it could be even less because some people throw a reactive for spares as well. So the worst case scenario, we're going to assume that all of this oil is removed by just the 150 shots of the reactive bowling balls. Everybody with me? So I have to spread 0.1 milliliters of oil in the track area. Over here, hopefully in the back over here, because we have the oil rings that converge here and then make the so-called bow tie. So I got myself a 1 milliliter syringe, and this part over here, the upper part, is 0.1 milliliters. So 1/10 of this syringe is probably the most oil that we will expect to see on a bowling ball after one shot. Everybody got that? Good. Let's do it. Wait, disclaimer. The laser scanner can vary to as much as 200 grit. That is very important to know when we are trying to find out very small variances from shot to shot. Also, this is why we scan multiple times, and I'm going to scan 2 equators. And also this is why I prefer this scanner than the portable handheld scanners, because those just measure 1 point, while here we get 40,000 points across all the circumference of the ball. I am going to do some tests on the lanes from shot to shot with the scanner, as I did in this video over here, where I scanned a purple hammer from shot to shot, and it's very interesting. Let's do it. Okay, here we go. Ready to scan for the baseline. This is the thing we're going to compare to. Okay, as you can see, the first scan is going to be very close to the fingers, where the first oil lines will appear. And let's see. Let's take a picture. So 357, write that down. We'll also write down the RA and the RS. Look at that, that's a lot. 130.76. And for the RS, I'm going to scan the excuse me, the micro option, which is at 0.0013. Okay, now the second area. I'm going to go away from the fingers, but as much as we can, like 2 inches maybe. So there. See, it should be something similar. Indeed, 415 with an RA of 124. Alright, now we're ready. I'm going to drop oil here and try to drop somewhere over here where the rings continue. It doesn't happen a lot. 6 minutes from our first scan. As you can see, some of the oil is there, some of the oil has been absorbed. You can see it here. So let's see what is the ball state when you play in a league, wait for your turn, haven't wiped the ball, and you go to play again. I'm placing the ball at exactly the same positions as the first scans, so everything's fair. $12.66. The second scan more away from the fingers, and the thumb was around here. Yeah, that's fine. Great. And now we took our measurements, and now I'm going to wipe the ball to simulate what happens when you play in the league. You wait your turn, you haven't wiped the ball, but you wipe it before your next shot. I'm going to scan it again. I'm going to use this CTD thingy with the leather part. Try to get as much of it as I can. Without spreading it too much. Okay. Showing you the track. Visibly there is no oil here. Okay. Wipe once more because I touched it and we have some oil on our fingers. And we're going to scan the same areas. Here, there. Okay. Here we go. Interesting. Ball shows what I expected it to show, but you're going to see as well. Okay. $4.33. So basically the ball is back to where it was originally. Alright, I got all the measurements, and I don't have a thermometer, so I'm going to use this foot thermometer. and just kind of show you a little bit the temperature. The room temperature here is about 21 degrees, so that's basically the temperature of the ball as well, maybe 22. It's coming up. You want Fahrenheit? Okay. Where is it? Here. 72. Around 71. Around 72 Fahrenheit. 22 Celsius and 72.5 Fahrenheit. So, here's what we got. Our base grid was 400 both here and here. We applied some oil, which we calculated that is approximately the oil that every shot brings back, and we scanned it immediately. We had 1900 over here, which is 1500 more than it was, and 1055 here. So that was 600 more. Now maybe one scan had more points of scanning on more parts of oil, and the other one had a little bit less. Doesn't matter. What matters is that also the array, which is basically how big of a teeth the ball presents to the lane, and the teeth were over here were 130. The number, it's just a unit. The higher the unit, the more teeth. The bigger the teeth, and so the more the ball grips the lane. So before applying the oil, it was 130 and it went down to 83. So that's like 40% less maybe. And the grit, as I said before, went from 400 to 1900. So 1500 more. That's a big difference. And on further away on the other scan, we had from 124, the unit of our teeth of the ball, the array, it went down to 90. So that's also a big difference. And from a 400 grit, we went up to 1055. So more than double. What does that mean? That means that this ball will now go longer, for sure. The other parts of the lane the other parts of the ball that don't have oil rings are the parts of the ball that, of course, are after the lane pattern and they don't encounter oil. So the difference there should be minimal. So that means that we're changing the behavior of the ball in the first two-thirds of the lane. So this ball is definitely gonna go longer, and I don't know how much longer. Depends probably on the topography, of the lane, of the material of the lane, of how old the lane is. Who knows? There are many factors. Then we waited around 6-7 minutes to simulate what happens when you go up to play your next shot in a league and you don't wipe it. And this part that was 400 before you threw your first shot is now 1200. So from 400 went to 1900 immediately, and then to 1200. So that's 3 times as shiny as it was in the beginning. and the RA went from 130 to 100, which is not logical. These two numbers are inversely proportional in some way. The RS remains pretty much the same, on all the scans I did. So the RS is the micro RS is the very finest texture of the ball. That means that how far each tooth is from the other, to put it simply. And that didn't change much. Okay, so we talked about this one, and over here we had a grid of 866, which is a little bit more than double than it was in the beginning. So still the ball after 7 minutes, and because as you saw, at least half of the oil was still on board, at least half of the oil, it shows exactly on the scans. Meaning that the scans are still high, still twice as it was before, more than twice as the initial condition of the ball. And then, immediately, I wiped the oil as much as I could, and we didn't hear, the ball looked quite dry. As you can see, this thing works well, so the microfiber also works very well with oil, but maybe this a little bit better. And we scanned again, and now the grit over here near your fingers was 554. That was like 100 more than before you threw the ball, which is nothing. It's basically the same. And the RA was very close, 110. And over here the grit was 433. That was exactly the same as before we threw the ball, before we used the ball. And the RA was also exactly the same. It was 124 before and 122 now. Results. Does the surface of our bowling ball in the track area, where that's the area that interests us, change when we practicing alone and we throw shot after shot without wiping the ball, or we are throwing our shots consecutively in the 10th frame? Yes, a lot actually. We went from 400 grit to 1900 grit on this part of the ball, and from 400 grit again to 1055 on this part. That was almost 5 times more on this part, and how much? And 2.5 times on this part. I doubt that you will have a consistent reaction with that kind of difference between shots. It's better to avoid it. Next, does our surface grit on the track change if we don't wipe the ball but wait 6 to 7 minutes for our next turn in a league, for example? Yes, again by a lot, because not all of the oil has absorbed into the ball yet. So we had at least half of the oil on the ball. We had from 400 to 1200 here, so 3 times as much. So the track over here was 3 times as shiny, and on this part it was 866 from 400 to 866, so double, more than double. Again, that's a big difference from shot to shot if you're waiting for your turn in a league and you don't wipe it. Some of the things, have you ever went up to throw a shot in the next frame and your previous shot was good and then your next shot was good, and yet the ball does something a little bit different? Well, sometimes it's because the lane changed from a ball from another player. Sometimes it's that you think your shot was identical, but sometimes it's because you didn't wipe your ball. Next, does the surface grit and the condition of of our surface of our bowling ball in the track area change if we still wait 6-7 minutes to throw our next shot, but we wipe it before we throw our next shot? Basically, no. We went from 400 grit here, 357, to 554. That's not much. You're not gonna notice that. And it could even be slight variations on the scanner. And over here we had 415 and we went to 433. That's basically the same. Which means that wiping the ball in a good manner, like I see some people they do this and they're done. That's not wiping. Okay. You saw in the video how I wipe the ball. You wipe it well. You take your time. Take 10 seconds to wipe it. It's not much. So if you wipe it well, the ball is actually the same as it was before you threw it. At least this is what the numbers say. And you can see it on the RA too. The RA it was 124 and now 122. In the discussion with J.R. Raymond, he mentioned this, where he said that he smeared oil on a 1000 grit ball, let it dry, and then the ball scanned higher. Conclusion: should we wipe our bowling ball from shot to shot? Short answer, yes. Because as we saw, the track area is 2 to 4 times shinier than before you threw the ball. That will probably change the behavior of the ball. It will not be very consistent. If the conditions are there, the ball might still be consistent, because if you run along a line that has a little bit more depletion of oil and you leave the oil on here, maybe it cancels out, it doesn't matter much. But you don't, who calculates all that? So why add another parameter that you can't control when you're throwing a shot? Bowling already has lots of parameters that we can't control and we can't see. I don't think it's very logical or very wise to add another one. Does that mean that we should always wipe our bowling ball and it's like a blanket statement? No. There are exceptions. For example, if the lanes are fried and we don't have a shinier, cleaner bowling ball, or we don't want to change from the ball we're throwing for whatever reason, then sure, we can not wipe it and leave the oil on there, because it will surely be cleaner through the fronts and retain some energy. But also remember that this way you are shortening the lifespan of the ball, because as more oil absorbs into the ball, the ability to absorb more oil diminishes. So then you start seeing the ball die and you go to de-oil it. De-oiling often can remove plasticizer, which further kills the ball, and so on and so on. So why not avoid all of that and just not let the damn oil be absorbed into the bowling ball? There. Now you have more insight on the matter and you can make more educated choices for your game and the situation you're in. I will repeat this test on the lanes by throwing the ball, just to compare the results we got, because that will also include the lane sign from the machines and the pulleys, so that's going to be also very interesting. That's it for today. I hope you liked it. Hope if you have questions, please write them below. If you have ideas for other experiments, also please write them. If you like the video and you like these kinds of videos, please subscribe, like, donate with the links in the description, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss another video. And thanks for watching, and see you on the next one. Bye.